Hi, today we're talking all about diastasis. So, diastasis recti is a separation between your rectus abdominis muscles. So, those are the two six-pack ab muscles that go up and down your belly. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to test for it. I'm going to tell you what it is and how to start to heal it. So, first and foremost, by the time you hit your third trimester, and especially labor and delivery, everyone has some degree of diastasis recti, so some degree of abdominal separation. However, usually that separation has a really good tension. And so you can't really feel the separation. And the goal during pregnancy is to maintain a really good tension between those two six-pack ab muscles. It's Those ab muscles are connected by what's called the linea alba, and that is this fascial connection between the two muscles. So when the baby grows, you are going to get some separation there. The goal is that you can't feel that separation. You have really good tension between that separation. How do you do this during pregnancy? Number one, you um, you learn how to activate your transverse abdominis muscle. So we have different videos on how to activate transverse abdominis muscle, and I will walk you through that after I test Dr. Marielle here. So that is number one. Number two is learning how to control what's called your intra abdominal pressure. That is the pressure inside your whole abdominal region. Okay, so if you take a really big inhale, belly expands really large. That is increased intra-abdominal pressure. Take a big exhale. That is decreased intra-abdominal pressure. So it's a simple way of describing pressure. Um, but when we move our body, like if Dr. Marielle was going to crunch off of the table or move her body in space, we'd want her to do that with decreased intra-abdominal pressure because that's going to help keep the belly together, keep the linea alba intact, so you're not getting a big separation and definitely not going to get a hernia. That is when there's a break in that actual fascia. Okay, so we want to control that intra abdominal pressure. Not only is that going to help keep you from having a clinically significant diastasis recti, one where it doesn't come to get back together postpartum. Um, if that happens, or if you can manage your pressure, you're going to help prevent that, but you're also going to prevent what's called pelvic organ prolapse. So that is when the bladder comes down into the vaginal canal or when the rectum comes down into the vaginal canal. You can check out the videos on that another time. Right now, we're going to focus on diastasis recti. So how I'm going to test her, let's say Dr. Marielle is about 10 weeks postpartum. She's not really, so you're not going to see much here, but this is how I check it. Again, this is just a self check. You shouldn't do this um, if like multiple times a day. You just want to check it once and get a good understanding of where you're at. And we will always check it here in clinic for you as well to help start your healing process. But it's not something we're going to recheck all the time. To really see strength and coordination changes when you start to heal your diastasis recti, that's going to take 6 to 8 weeks just to make those changes alone. And usually it takes a little bit longer than that. So some people won't have a separation that you can feel at 6, 8, 12 weeks postpartum. That's awesome. That means it's healed. That probably means that they've started activating their transverse abdominis. However, some people will have that separation. And not only the separation is what we're looking at, we're also looking at how far our fingers sink in between that separation. So the goal of healing the diastasis recti postpartum is actually to make sure that there's enough tension generated that my fingers don't just sink into the abdominal wall, and there is good tension to keep me out of there, keep me out of her organs, meaning her core is going to be firing and working. So here's how I'm going to check. So I'm going to just adjust the camera screen here. All right. So may I touch your belly here? Okay. So I'm going to lift up her tank top and bring down the pants. We want to be looking at the degree of separation between the xiphoid process, which is right below the sternum. So you're going really high up into the ribs and down to the pubic bone. What I do first is I'll just say, can I have you lift your head and your shoulders off, kind of seeing what's happening here. So what I'm looking for is any coning. So if she has any coning here, I'm going to be really eyeing that spot and thinking, hey, that's where we might have the biggest degree of separation. That's where we might have the biggest um, uh, decrease in tension. Okay, she doesn't have any, so not a great example. Go ahead and come back down. I want you to do that again without activating TA. So just go ahead and come up. Good. And come back down. You're too good of an example. Again, she hasn't had kids, so don't compare yourself here. So now I'm going to take 2 fingers and I'm going to go right to her belly button. And I actually guess I kind of put 3 there just to check. And then I'll say, okay, Dr. Mariel, can you go ahead and do that same move again? And I'm feeling how many fingers I can get between her rectus abdominis muscles and how deep it's letting me in. Go ahead and come back down. Now I go about 2 fingers above belly button and I check again there. Okay, good. I feel really good tension. I don't feel a lot of gapping. Good. Come back down. 2 fingers above that. So when I go 2 fingers above and then I turn my fingers like this. So when you're doing it yourself, you're going to feel your fingers like this when you're crunching up. And then to go 2 fingers above that, you go vertical. And then when you go into the crunch, you're going to go horizontal and crunch up around that. So go ahead and come into it again. Beautiful. Good. Come back down. 2 fingers above that. Go ahead and come up again. Beautiful. Come back down. And all the way up to xiphoid. Go ahead and come up. Good. So I just checked, come back down. I just checked her upper abdominals to see if there was any separation or diastasis recti above her belly button. Now, I want to just say we do see this in people who haven't had kids. And so it is really good that she is this solid and I can feel her core active. So now I'm going to go 2 fingers below the belly button. And then now go ahead and come up again. Good. Come back down. Beautiful. Going 2 fingers below that. Go ahead, come back up. Beautiful. And I'm going to go all the way down to pubic bone. Are you okay with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Here, and then go ahead and come back up. Good. And come back down. Good. So now I've just checked the whole entire diastasis. So if she had had a diastasis, I'd have been able to find it. And if it was just at one part, maybe it was just down low. Sometimes people feel like they look like they're 5 or 6 months pregnant with just having a diastasis down low. Sometimes they feel, like they're really good at engaging down low, but they have this upper ab separation. And so usually you know where your diastasis is. You've maybe already checked it and know you have a diastasis. Maybe you can see it, and that's what drives you nuts, is more the cosmetic aspect of it. But when it comes down to it, if you have a diastasis and you have some degree of separation, there is that is a problem. And so the separation is less of a problem. It's the tension that's between the separation that we want to make sure is really rock solid. And that's when it almost doesn't matter how much separation there is, as long as we can not stick our fingers in it, then we know that the core is solid, the core is firing for us, and we're not going to be doing more damage. What we end up seeing is people live with diastasis recti for years and years and years, and then have this chronic low back pain or hip pain, and it just progresses and persists, and they don't know why, their physical therapy hasn't worked, and they just kind of always deal with this hip and low back pain. And a lot of times it's because they haven't healed that diastasis, especially if there's a C-section scar there. It's hard to recruit your deep core muscles that are going to help heal that diastasis and really make it a good a good tension right between there. So a good strong core is what I'm trying to say. So I hope that's helpful for you. One of the key pieces in healing diastasis recti and why a lot of the online programs don't work for people is because you have to have a really relaxed and good tone in your pelvic floor. What ends up happening is if we have a diastasis recti, other muscles in our body are going to compensate for us. You get your internal obliques working really hard. When your obliques are working really hard, that means that there's increased force to cause that separation. That's not a great thing. What the muscle that we really want to start to drive and get recruited for our movement, yes, obliques have to fire, but we need our transverse abdominis to really fire. And that is a broad muscle that goes from hip bone to hip bone and crosses underneath the deep core. And so that is the key to start healing the diastasis. A really big thing that's missed is people think they are activating that muscle when all they're activating is their obliques. Okay, so we're going to talk about what that looks like right now. So I'm going to have Dr. Marielle do a core activation where she's isolating her transverse abdominis, and then I'll have you see what that looks like. So Dr. Marielle, let's have you activate your transverse abdominis by taking your pubic bone and driving it up towards your belly button. Good. And so what I should feel when she activates correctly is I should feel a firming and a lifting under my fingers, okay? And so I oftentimes will put my fingers right here and just see if I can get that same activation. Make sure that she lets that activation go. Go ahead and let that go. Beautiful. And now if she was just doing her obliques, can you try and fire just your obliques here? Let it go. Kind of push out a little bit more. There you go. So if this is what happens for most people when they try to activate their TA and isolate their TA, is they get more of a pushing out. So you'll actually feel it like firm, but push out into your fingers. And that is when you're using more obliques, okay? What we're trying to isolate is transverse abdominis. The reason we want our movement to be driven by the transverse abdominis is because that's what's going to sew this back together and create that good tension between the separation, okay? If we're driving with our obliques, again, the obliques are out here, so that's gonna cause more of the pulling sensation, causing more thinning in this area, which is not gonna help us improve our tension. So that's why we wanna drive our movement with the transverse abdominis. The other really key important factor here is if you are going to physical therapy for diastasis recti and they haven't checked your pelvic floor, that is a really big red flag. You have to have pelvic floor therapy to truly heal the diastasis. The reason for that is the pelvic floor is at the bottom of the canister. So you have, say, your front muscles, these six-pack ab muscles right here, okay? These ab muscles are at the front of the canister. The separation is here. The pelvic floor is at the bottom. The diaphragm is at the top. Then you have your back and your glute muscles at the backside. Okay. So if the pelvic floor is really tight, this is a muscle that compensates when you have a diastasis recti. This is a muscle that compensates. So if your deep core muscles aren't firing because you've had a C-section or because they just expanded so great during pregnancy and you couldn't find them once those muscles started to expand, it's not uncommon, then what compensates is the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor gets tighter to try and give you the stability that your other muscles should be giving you. Okay. So if that pelvic floor is really tight, what also happens is because it's the bottom of the canister, that increases the intra-abdominal pressure, making it nearly impossible for you to start to heal the diastasis recti. Because if this is really causing a ton of pressure, there's no way that you're going to be able to close around that pressure. Okay, so that's really important piece of healing a true diastasis recti. So I hope that's helpful for you. Another key aspect of this healing picture is also glute activation, making sure your glutes are firing and getting the back part of the canister. So I hope this is helpful. Please reach out to us for a complimentary discovery session if you're in the state of Washington, or we can do coaching sessions if you're outside of the state. We're also going to be launching our online postpartum recovery session series, and that will be launching soon in the form of an online program. So I hope you found this helpful. Please reach out to us. If your online program didn't work for you, the reason is most likely because your pelvic floor hasn't responded to any of the relaxation work that you've been doing, if that's even been a part of your program. If you're strictly just activating abs and core in your program, that's another reason why it probably hasn't worked for you. So definitely you want to see a pelvic expert physical therapist and or at least talk to one so you can work through what's happened in your body during your pregnancy, during your birthing process, and especially if you plan to have future pregnancies so you can prevent this from getting worse. All right, take care.